Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's UK Crime Book Club author chat with Jo. Jo, do you want to give us a brief introduction and show off your book covers?
Okay, hi, I'm Jo Ullah, and these are my two books. They're my read copy. That's why they've got little things coming out of them.
So you wrote The Lockdown and Sweet Dreams. The Locksmith, sorry, not The Lockdown, The Locksmith.
And Sweet Dreams.
Fantastic.
I'm still getting used to the camera being in opposite directions.
It's tricky to get used to, it definitely is. So we've got some questions that have come in from admins and group members, so we'll dive straight into those.
Okay.
Caroline Maston, hi Kaz, has asked, would you write about the current lockdown situation?
Well, funnily enough, the book I'm working on now, I was nailing down the timeline and I realised that they might actually get stuck in lockdown. So I've then considered how that's going to affect the plot. And I think it could be quite interesting because I want that particular part to be a romance that goes wrong. So it would be quite good. It would make it very intense if they were in lockdown together, and then their true colours come through and it shows that they're not working as a couple.
I'd imagine there's lots of true colours coming through at the moment.
Yes, yeah. And unexpected patios appearing in people's gardens. I expect to.
One of my favourite jokes for my husband. We've got a question from Pat Adams-Wright, one of our member authors. Who are your literary heroes?
Well, Stephen King, of course, everybody's favourite. Minette Walters, Gillian White. I tend to get into somebody and then I just read loads and loads and loads of their work. So I really like Nikki French at the moment. I read loads of Nikki French, especially the new one they do, which is Monday through to Sunday. So each one is a day of the week. And I'm struggling to remember the name of the character that they go in depth into this main character, and she's really good. I really like her. They don't normally do that in Nikki French books, but they really go in depth into her characterization. You get used to her all the way through the series of the novels. So yeah.
You seem to be frozen on your screen at the moment, Jo. Yeah, it's kind of stuck in a loop. Oh no, there we go. And just like that, like magic.
I'm back again.
You are. Jason Keller, hi Jason, admin, has asked, did it take a long time to write Sweet Dreams? I've noticed that there was a 2-year gap between books. I already know the answer to this, but...
Well, yeah, Sweet Dreams was much faster than The Locksmith. The Locksmith took 9 years because it's a first novel. I was learning everything, and that process through writing it. So Sweet Dreams is much faster because I now understand the nuts and bolts of writing a novel. But I still go back to my favourite learning books and reread bits to remind myself. But I think you do just gradually get faster and faster and faster as you go along.
Do you use the same books a lot then? Do you have any
I do.
resources to share with us?
This is my all-time favourite book. It's really short. And it basically tells you to consider, if you think of a novel, you think about the beginning and the end. So you've got to have some change that happens. So somebody likes coffee, and by the end of the novel, they like tea. But why did that happen? How did it happen? And this explains how to find that transformative moment. And once you know your transformative moment, you know your whole novel. So you can be in the middle of a novel and you get that kind of middle bit, and you know what's going to happen in the end, but you're kind of lost in this tangle of, oh, I don't know what's happening. And you read a book like this and it just brings it all back together again for you, and helps you find your reason again. So that's my favorite book.
And we have got some comments at the side, but they all appear to say, apart from Caroline's, they all say Facebook user. So
How do you mean?
So we've got somebody that says, I loved both books.
Oh, good.
So that's fantastic. So if whoever that Facebook user is would like to comment that again with their name, then we can get Jo to say hello to you. Helen Blenkinsop. Hi, Helen.
Oh,
Is
hi.
Bristol,
Hi, Helen.
is Bristol really such a dark and sinister place?
Yeah, well, it can be. I think so, yes.
Lots and lots of books are set in Bristol.
It's very colourful. There's a big art crowd. There's a big music crowd. I think people are quite independent and different. They're not afraid to be different. And therefore, that gives you a lot of scope to play around. The architecture here is amazing. You can walk from one end of it to the other in like half a day. So it's small enough. Things like the Thekla, which appears in Sweet Dreams, I've been going there since I was in my early 20s, and that's still going, and my children are going there. So it's amazing to think that there's a place like that club. It was the only club. We used to drive up from Sherborne and Dorset to go to Thekla on a weekend night. And now there's clubs everywhere, so, and all different ones that cater to all different tastes and needs, but they didn't have that when I was in my 20s.
We've got a comment from Caroline Maston. I'm loving how smiley they both are. That's nice. So we both look very smiley.
Well, it's fun to be a writer, isn't it? Because you know, you do dastardly things to people.
It's definitely fun. We've got a question. Now, I had some trouble pronouncing your surname yesterday when we were practicing. So somebody's asked, can you tell us about your surname? Where does it come from? I've never heard of it before.
Well, actually, it's my husband's surname, and his family comes from Pakistan originally. And it was two names bolted together, but when they came to England in the 60s, they just cut it down to Ullah. And when I was thinking about what name to publish under, my name, my original name, or my married name, actually, there's no Jo Ullahs out there. There's one female footballer called Jo Ullah. So I thought, actually, I'll stick with that because it's different enough.
Yeah, it's nice. Nice to have a different name than everybody else.
Yeah.
Where will your next book be set? Another one from Helen Blenkinsop.
Oh, that's in Bristol as well, actually. So that's set in Windmill Hill, mostly. And I'm about a third of the way through it at the moment. But it's quite slow going. So I feel I make myself sit down and write for a bit each day because haven't got into a flow with it for quite a while.
Yeah.
The first 20,000 words happened quite quickly, but then it slowed down for various reasons. And now I've been pulling myself back into it. And sometimes you've just got to make yourself sit and write. And even if you're writing complete crap, you just give yourself permission to write crap and keep going. And you can always go back and make it better later. And
So do you do much planning when you're do you do much planning before you start writing?
Actually. This novel, which is currently called Echoes of Minerva, I planned it completely from beginning to end, and then I just put that aside and forget about it because it's in my head. I know what's happening, but I don't want to keep it that rigid. I've got to let the characters develop because I'd say that my stories are very much character based rather than plot based, and I don't know if they're going to take over and change things a bit, but I have a pretty good idea of how it's supposed to end.
We had another question from Caroline Maston. She wanted to know how much research you have to.
Oh, you've gone frozen now. I researched for Sweet Dreams a lot because it follows the.
Oh, Jo, you're back.
You disappeared.
Yeah, we couldn't see you for a minute.
Well,
so research.
This one I researched a lot for because it was set off by a friend of mine who does EFT tapping.
Okay.
And we worked together when she was in her training, and that gave me the thought, what could happen if you opened up something in somebody which was unintentional and let loose from them, which is kind of one of the ideas that explored in there. And I did a lot of research about Romanian orphanages in the 80s. So I read about Ceausescu and I read about orphanages. I read an awful, horrific book written by somebody who was rescued from one. And I read about wolves as well, and various other things. And then just let the information go and wrote. But there is quite a few. It's like you need to know a lot just to put one or two words correctly, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Have you found anything surprising when you've been doing your research? Obviously, you've read some pretty sad things. Is there anything that surprised you about Bristol?
I can't say that there's anything about Bristol that surprised me, but in studying about the Ceausescu orphanages and the orphans, some of the really dreadful things that one of the people described in his book that he did to other children, because he thought it was all normalised to him.
Yeah.
And it's shocking to think that a child could be taught to do terrible, terrible things to other children because that's what they see and that was what was normalised to them in their environment.
Yeah, that's quite a disturbing thing, obviously, for you to have to read and for them to live. Obviously.
Yes, and then be prepared to admit to and face up, because the only way you can repair is if you face these things and forgive yourself for them and then move on. Otherwise, you're victimised by them for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's true. We have another one from Helen Blenkinsop. She says, another Bristol book, I can see a theme emerging. Would you write about another city like London? Having said that, I think it's refreshing to see books about urban professionals outside London.
Oh, you've gone still. Have I gone still?
Still here.
Well, I've got, when I'm writing one, I always get another one kind of poking through, going, write about me, write about me. And I have got one that I'd like to write about, which will be a series, which is looking at the character Imi from The Locksmith, who has psychic abilities. And because my husband worked for a while in one of the charity shops in Park Street, and there were some very unusual characters in there, one of whom was psychic and the other one was telekinetic, when you could move things. And but they talked about it in the most ordinary of ways. So the one who was telekinetic, she wasn't allowed on a shop floor because things would fly about. And the one who's psychic, she didn't like to go down the cellar because there was a child locked in part of the basement. Only she could see. And I thought it'd be really nice if Imi, about her having grown up a bit, working in a charity shop, and she can become a bit of a sleuth because of the ghosts that come to her, and she would learn information.
Frozen again.
Have we? Oh, I can see me moving. I'm back again. Are you back again? So yeah, I'd like to explore that.
Yeah, I think that'd be fascinating because I won't go into too much. Obviously, I don't want to give anything away from The Locksmith, but Imi's definitely a really interesting character, and you really bring her to life with her drawings and her stories and the way that she interacts with the world around her. So I'm really excited that we'll get to see her as a grown-up.
Yes, I think I'd like to kind of start her off at about 16 and then follow her up through, because two of my daughters have worked in the charity shop as well, and they talk about how all the things in the shop actually give you kind of a fuzzy feeling. So again, I can sort of work on those and play with that. And you get very interesting people working in charity shops. They're there for and people who come into them are quite unusual too. So yeah,
I've certainly frequented a lot of charity shops looking for different things. So yeah, definitely some oddballs, as in me, not charity workers. Let's be clear. A Facebook user has asked, "Do you have a daily word target?"
No, I don't. I think I'll make myself sit down for 10, 15 minutes and then I'm lost and suddenly an hour's gone by.
Mm.
Mostly, I find I can't write for more than 2 hours. Then it just kind of dries up, or my hand
Mm.
hurts, or it just stops. But if I do, say, half an hour in the morning, I might be able to go back and do a bit more. I've
Yeah.
recently started writing a diary as well because I find that's really good for my practice. It's just a short amount in there,
Yeah.
just before bedtime. And I had some thought in my head. Where's it gone? Oh yeah, this is something I really like, um, which is what I use for free writing. Which free writing is something I think is a really useful thing to do. And I love this because it's like one of those children's flip charts that will give you
Okay.
it will give you something to then write about. So this one says, suffering from an incessant hallucinations, a 15-year-old college student grows an extra arm, and then you just got to write for 10 minutes, about that. And that's very good for getting the grease going in your brain, which means
Mm.
you can then sit down and write anytime you want. You do that for 10 minutes, and then you head in to your novel. It's already, everything's working and going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Caroline Maston has asked, who did you dedicate your first book to?
I didn't. Don't think
You
I
didn't?
did.
Okay.
No, didn't that one. But Sweet Dreams is dedicated to the friend who is the EFT practitioner, because working with her with EFT really, really is amazing. And I found it was brilliant for me, my family, everybody. So yeah, I dedicated it to her. She was very shocked and surprised, very unassuming
Mhm.
person. But I didn't. But I have got a quote from Oscar Wilde in The Locksmith, which is, "The truth is rarely pure and never simple," because I thought that explained the book very
It
well.
really does. It does. It opens with intrigue. We have a question from, it just says Facebook user. So if anybody's asking any questions, please do feel free to start with your name in case it doesn't come up. I've never read any of your books before. If you meet me in a bookshop, what would you say to persuade me to buy your book instead of someone else's? Now you've got
Oh,
some really nice little
yeah, I'd say, do you like character-based books? If you like character-based books with a touch of the supernatural in them, which involve family and reality and unreality at the same time, then maybe you'd like to read this.
Do you have any tools that you use to tell people
I
about
use,
your books?
well, I use Facebook and Twitter. My husband is a software engineer, so he's really good at Twitter, and he has a way of putting things and cascading them down. So I have, that's whoosh to me. I have no idea how that works, but he's quite good at that. And I have these little cards, which
That's where I was going.
yeah, which
I
have the
love
blurb
these.
on the back and the book cover on the front, and then I kind of leave them places, and if people find them, I pick them up and put them away, or I always carry some in my pocket. So if somebody says, "What are you doing at the moment?" I say, "Oh, well, I just happened to have done this," and
I love those. They're fantastic.
they're very inexpensive, easy to carry around, and it's instant advertising without having to explain anything. So yeah.
They are the great. I think more authors should steal the idea.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
Um,
that.
Helen Blenkinsop says, "I love your writing tips."
Oh,
So we're
thank
clearly
you.
you're entertaining your audience, which is good. Caroline's asked, "I like the covers. Did you design them yourself?"
No, I am an artist. Oh, I don't know whether, because you've gone still. I don't know if I've gone still. Is it still working? Oh, Oh, is it still working? Oh, okay. So what was I saying? I was answering something. I can't remember what it was because my brain went blank. So I'll talk about totems then. I like to put totems in my novels. And in Sweet Dreams, for instance, the totems are fairy tale. Every chapter has a mention of fairy tale in it. But I haven't done it in too heavy-handed a way. I just want it to be there and be slightly noticed. And that if you put a totem in each chapter, it can pull the whole book together. And then at the end of the book, she talks about how life isn't a fairy tale. So that works in that one. And then the locksmith, the totems in there are birds. So the birds are on the covers. Whoops, there it is. And birds reappear, particularly swallows, in each chapter. I can see the questions at the side. So yeah, regarding the book covers, no, although I'm an artist, I wouldn't think that I wouldn't consider myself good enough to design my own cover. I think it's really important to get that done professionally. So I found somebody that I felt comfortable with, and she and I worked together on what images I wanted. Hello.
Oh,
And then she designed it for me. And then I asked her with the second book to keep the series looking like they came from the same author, as it were. So that's why they both have the same grimy look to them, because I wanted them to work together. And I really like what she does, so I would definitely go back to her again and get it done again. And the same with structural edit. I pay a professional to do a structural edit because I know what I'm writing about, but someone else, you get a strong feel of what you're writing, but you assume that everyone sees what you see. That's why you need a professional to read it and tell you where it's not working and where it is working. And then beta readers, they're really, really important. I get as many people as I can to beta read. And I love beta reading other people's work as well, because I think you learn a lot about writing by reading what other people have done and by going through their work and seeing where it's not working for them and being able to make recommendations or saying, oh, that's really, really good. I think you should pull that out further. And that helps you in your own writing as well.
of course, yeah. Well, thank you for taking over hosting yourself for a few minutes. On my screen, you'd disappeared
I
and
sat
you
like that.
frozen.
I didn't
So,
know whether
so
I
I
was
was sat here talking to the screen, thinking that I was covering for you, and all the time you're covering for me. So thank you.
That's why I had the ticker tape at the side to tell me, by the way, we can still see you.
That's how I knew, actually. So thank you, Caroline Maston. That's how I knew that I'd disappeared, because it came up in the comments. I really didn't know. So thank you to all of the people who were just coming up as Facebook user who said Samantha is frozen, but Jo hasn't. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, that was good. And
So Caroline's asked, what has been your most memorable moment as an author? I always love to find this out.
well, when I had first of all, when I wrote The Locksmith, I followed the traditional route and contacted lots of different agents, wrote letters. You're supposed to only send it off to 4 different people. Then you're meant to wait. The first one I sent it to, she wanted the whole manuscript, so I was really, really excited, and she was somebody I really wanted to work with. And then she said, oh, well, thank you, but I didn't quite gel with the narrative and what have you. And that was kind of a crashing moment. And I did that for about 18 months. And then I thought, actually, I could be doing this for years. And I just want to get this book out there so I can move on to my next one. And I was at an ally meeting. Ally is brilliant. I couldn't recommend that enough for anybody to join. I was at an ally meeting, and somebody there brought up Kindle Scout, which isn't running anymore, but I just thought, well, why not give it a go? And I entered it into Kindle Scout, and it won. And I was so amazed, and I was on cloud nine for about 4 or 5 months, I think, after that, because it just qualifies what you're doing, and there's nothing better than that, than knowing that people are reading it, that they're enjoying it, and because it's quite a lonely business being a writer, and in a way you're just kind of blowing into the wind. You've just got no idea if you're writing rubbish or if it's any good, if people are quick to it or not. So that validation is really important, I think. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. An earlier question that we had from Helen Blenkinsop. Hi again, Helen. There is the paranormal edge to each of your psychological thrillers. How much of the world do you feel is still unexplained by science?
Oh, loads and loads. I grew up in a family where my grandfather was a vicar, but he could also claim to hear people's thoughts. And he used to talk to me about different ghosts he'd had conversations with. And my grandmother read the cards, but she used ordinary packs of cards, not tarot cards. He used to use a pendulum. So it was very normalized in the family that there were things outside of life that were just there. And my mother was a typical 70s person, as in she taught us to do the Ouija board when we were about 10 years old. And she used to read horror stories to me and let me watch horror movies. So I didn't sleep for much of my childhood. But I developed a big interest in all of that. So, like Elizabeth Allende, it's normalizing the peculiar, and that's what I want to bring in, sort of a magic realism, if you were.
And it works really well. It really does. Helen again, how have real people you've met inspired your writing of complex characters like Audra?
Well, Audra started out being my mother, but I realised my mother wasn't capable of some of the rather unpleasant acts that Audra does.
That's a relief.
And we had, my sister had hired somebody to come and live in and look after my father. And it wasn't really working out. So I went down to stay and look after him. And I ended up in an argument with this woman who was quite scary, although she was quite small. She was, she was a scary woman. And I found myself hiding the knives. And I thought, actually, she is Audra. So, yeah, I then kind of changed it. There's a lot of my mother in Audra, but there's a lot of this other woman as well. So
that's quite concerning.
Yes, yeah, I know. We had to move my father out in the end.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
She stayed in the house, but my father had to be moved to a home.
Okay. Moving on to actually, that slides nicely right into Helen Blenkinsop's next question. Why did you decide to make Astrid a carer for old people, a career that very much happened behind the scenes before COVID?
Well, I did care work. I've done it on and off over the years. It's something that I really enjoy. And I was doing care work in Bristol, and then I had to stop to go and look after my father with this peculiar woman. So I thought that because Astrid is somebody she's lost her job, she's lost the love of her life, she's lost many things. She needed a job that will help pay the bills while she trains to be an EFT practitioner. And becoming a carer is actually really, really simple. You go in and you do some training. They don't do much checks on you at all, and they let pretty much anybody go into people's homes and look after them, which is scary in its own right.
Yeah.
But most of the carers I met were very, very kind and caring people. So I thought that was quite a useful character to write about, because she has access to many people's homes and in and out and around the city. It also allows her to put aside her shy side and make herself be more proactive, which is what she needs to develop and learn and grow in the book, is to become proactive and less kind of a victim.
Caroline has asked, how do you celebrate your publication days?
I don't. They just kind
Nothing
of
at
happen.
all? Not a cup of tea and a relax?
No, nothing. I mean, I don't really drink anymore, so I can't even have a glass of champagne or anything like that. So they just kind of go in with a whimper instead of a shout and a bang.
Are you reading anything yourself at the moment?
I am reading. God, I've forgotten her names. I have got a Nikki French on the side. I've forgotten the name of the author. But she writes quite creepy tales. Very prolific author, and I've turned my phone off, so I can't tell you what it's called. It's in there. So yeah, it's in my Kindle on my phone. But I'm also reading a lot of children's books in preparation for becoming a teacher. So
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, hopefully in September I'll be let in the classroom to teach English. I want to teach creative writing, amongst other things. My main concern actually is grammar. I'm terrified of grammar. I'm not very good at it, and that's why I pay somebody else to tell me where my grammar's gone wrong. And Helen Blenkerstop, who very kindly beta read for me, can tell you how much it drove her insane when I moved between tenses in Sweet Dreams. So yeah, I think I've got a hang of my tenses now, but I've been reading book after book after book about grammar because I'm trying to nail that down and understand it.
Helen's actually written, Audra is your mother. Oh my God.
Well, my mother actually was called Audrey, so that's where the name Audra came from. Yeah.
So where do you come up with your character names from?
Well, Audra
They are
after my
unusual
mother.
names. They're interesting names.
Well, Jude is because of the Beatles song "Hey Jude." Is the idea of a person that if you'll let her under your skin, she'll make it better. That's Jude is the locksmith, and they're both locksmiths really. And Audra makes the locks, and Jude is unlocking them, metaphorically speaking. I dreamt the locksmith quite a long time ago, and I knew that was the name of the book. And then I was reading the Enneagram. Have you come across the Enneagram?
No.
It's the 9 character types. It's quite useful for creating characters, and somebody recommended it to me. And at the beginning, there's a Sufi saying in there, a Sufi story, which is about a person who's locked away, and his wife brings him a carpet, and in the carpet there's instructions on how to make a key to escape from his prison. And this story is called The Locksmith. And I was blown away by that because I didn't know why my book was called The Locksmith. I had dreamt it was called The Locksmith, and I knew that was its name. But then I suddenly understood why it was called The Locksmith because of the Sufi story. So yes, that's why
We've got another. Sorry, go on.
Oh, and Astrid. I've always had a fascination with the name Astrid. One thing I find that once I've written about someone, I then keep bumping into them everywhere. It's really weird. I'm always seeing Jude and Spider in Bristol, and I've now, when I'd written about Astrid, a young woman moved into part of Southfield that I live in, and she's a interior decorator, and she's called Astrid, and she has Astrid written in massive letters on the side of her van. And I just thought, oh, this is just weird. Wherever I go, my characters keep popping up.
Helen Blenkinsop has said, I was honoured to beta read Sweet Dreams, completely gripped.
Thank you.
And we've got a comment from, I'm just getting Facebook user. Do you have any hobbies?
Well, yeah, I have too many, actually, is the trouble. They're all attempts to get away from writing, I think is what it is. So I like painting spots on things. So I use a nail tool, and paint spots, and I'm very slow and methodical, and it's more about the spaces between the spots than the spots themselves. So that's very meditative. And I sculpt, and I used to make tapestries, but I haven't made tapestries for a while. And I love my garden, so I do that. Yeah, mostly art related things.
Nice and relaxing things to focus and yeah. Somebody's commented, I prefer this way of author chats. So
Good.
thank you. You are our first official live author chat from our weekly ones. We have a question. Is Jo short for Joanne?
It is, yes.
Are your books written in first, second, or
Third.
third point of view?
This one is third person point of view. And then I wanted to write Sweet Dreams in first, present tense. First person is in Astrid, and then the antagonist is written in third person, present tense. And it was the present tense that got me in a tangle, but it is really hard to write in present tense. But I'm addicted to it now, and I can't stop. So the next book's going to be in present tense as well. But this was third tense because I think because most books I read are like that, so it just was more natural to do that. Third person, third tense, yeah, past tense. I mean, not third tense.
So you were saying earlier on that when you're writing a book, the next one's kind of poking at you. Do you start the next one at the same time, or make any notes, or do you just leave it to kind of?
I do sometimes make notes. I do have collections. So what I do when I'm writing a book, I collect pictures of the characters. I write about them. I get to know them as much as I can. I know about their school lives, their parents, their grandparents, everything I can about them. And there are some that I've kind of started in and then put aside, and I've written a bit of a plot base, but then they haven't fully gestated, so they get put aside until they've reached full gestation, and then I can go in there and write it. So yeah.
We've got a question that says, do you enjoy social media?
I do, and it's one of those things, isn't it? You just think, oh, I heard my thing ping, I'll just have a quick look, and like half an hour later, you realise you've lost all that time and you've been shuffling about in Facebook and Twitter and everything.
It is easy to get lost in it.
Yeah.
I've got to admit, I have to turn mine on silent every now and again.
This is I've been keeping this for about 30 years, and there's all the ideas that I have for books and short stories. And then if they start nagging at my brain, I can go in there and I can just add a bit in. So yeah.
So do you tick things off as you go?
Yes, that's really satisfying to tick off. See, the locksmith is ticked off there. And Sweet Dreams. I didn't know it was called Sweet Dreams at that time.
So where did you come up with the title for Sweet Dreams?
Because she's a prophetic dreamer. So she dreams stuff that happens, but it's always pretty useless stuff. And it used to happen to me, or it still happens occasionally. But the first one I had was when I was about 14, and that's what I opened the book with, was her dream, was the same dream I had when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I found that scene actually really difficult to write. People kept saying, well, it's too long, but it was because it was something that happened, and I wanted to express how shocked I was that I'd had this dream, and then I went to this party and it happened, and it's just like, oh wow. So after that, I used to keep a dream diary to see whether, but they're always useless things that you might say later, oh yeah, that did relate to that, or whatever.
We've got a flurry of questions coming in. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Oh.
When will books freebie out. Do you have a deadline for that, or are you just seeing how it goes at the moment?
I haven't got a deadline because I've got to start studying in June, and then I think once I'm in the classroom, I'm going to have like a year of being quite intense with that because I have to do
Yeah.
essay writing as well. So I'm not going to push myself to get this book done. I'll just have it petering along, and then the editing process is very, very long because when I first write a book, it's rubbish, and it takes about 11 or 12 edits to get it into something reasonable. And then I like to thread through all the totems in there and more descriptiveness. And then, people, beta readers and structural edits, say this isn't working. There's a lot of work that goes in and changes that happen.
Yeah. I know a lot of authors not always overly thrilled with the editing part, so I'm sure there's lots of people who understand that.
I like it. I do enjoy it, but it's, once you've done it, read it through about 7 times, you think, oh, I've got to go through it again. And I do listen to it as well. I have a program which plays to me,
Oh, right,
so I
okay.
can listen to it, and that makes it better. And I also read it to my daughter, and so reading it aloud helps. And although she's only 16, she's like 16 going on 42, so she always comes up with the best criticisms.
Caroline Maston has asked, what advice would you give to a new writer who's just starting out?
Just write as often as you can. Don't be too critical on yourself, because it is quite often crap when what you first write, and then it's edits that make it better. Read some really good advice on writing, like Stephen King's On Writing book and things like that. There's plenty of blogs out there will tell you what to read. Join Ally. Join a writing group. Alliance of Independent Authors.
Okay.
So they are very supportive of each other. We meet up at things. We have Zoom meetings now. And although we all write in different genres, nobody's competitive. They're really helpful and friendly and supportive of each other, give each other ideas and advice and invite each other to things. It's a really good group. It's a global group as well. So you join their Facebook group and you can put questions in and get responses from all around the world.
Fantastic. Yeah. I hadn't heard of Ally, so that's a really good piece of advice for anyone starting out.
Yeah, I had a mentor, which I found was really good. I would call that a fast track to becoming a writer. It's not cheap. It cost me about £600, but she was really good. That was Rosemary Dunn. She's a Bristol author, and she was quite tough. She would get me to write 5,000 words, and then she would rip it apart at our monthly meeting. But she was a really solid teacher. She also works with the Open University teaching creative writing, so she was a really, really good teacher. I think there's
so
also
is that the course that you did? Oh, sorry, go on, carry on.
No, I think there's one you can do online. Someone was telling me about. There's Mentors for Women or something like that, and I think it's like a free thing. It's an arrangement. You can get together with a mentor and you help each other. So that would be a good one to have.
Brilliant. Were you going to attend any festivals or anything that have been cancelled?
I am. Yes, I'm going to be doing with Helen Blenkinsop, who's AA Abbott, and Debbie Young. We're doing the Crediton Literary Festival, which is on the 6th of June at 11:30. And in order to join it, you have to email the Crediton Library at crediton.library@librariesunlimited.org.uk. And we'll be talking about writing crime fiction from city to countryside and how they work together, and
keeping you busy as well. Has it been difficult to publicise your work at the moment with the obviously changes?
I recently did a free. There's loads of free things going on at the moment. So I did a free online course, which was about how to advertise on Amazon. because I hadn't done that before. Because my first book was published by Kindle Press, I'm
Yeah.
not allowed to advertise on Amazon. I think it's because I'll upset all their algorithms, as they have like their
Okay.
magic algorithms, don't they? So I've been really keen to do that with the second book, to have a go at advertising. But when you go in there, it's like, wow, where do you start? What do you do? So I was just kind of pressing buttons and hoping for the best. And then I joined this thing, and he really, really explains to you how to do it and how much money you bid is like 30p or whatever, and what kind of things you can write to get your book advertised and out there. Otherwise, nobody knows this.
Sorry, we've got a comment from, it just says Facebook user. It is Womentoring, or is it Womentoring, Jo? If
Yeah,
that's
something
your
like
email.
that. Yeah. I think so.
The comment says, I think we spoke about it when we met the other week. I'm not sure if it's still running now, though. My mentor was Louise Jensen. Is that Helen?
Yeah, that's it then. That's the we're mentoring. Yeah. I did make a note of that because I thought it would be something that I'd like to do. I'd enjoy to mentor someone. I have to wait till I'm not doing quite so much before I start.
Might be overkill with the amount of going on at the moment.
I'll start shouting at the children instead.
Are there any subjects that you won't write about? That's from a Facebook user. So sorry, I don't know who that one's from.
Well, one of the scenes that I wrote in Sweet Dreams, I actually felt really upset about it, and I was really concerned about it, whether it should be in there or not. It was based on something that actually happened in Queen Square in Bristol. It's happened a few times, and I found that hard, and I found the idea of writing about. I put a book down the other day and just thought, I'm not going to read this because it had a lot about child cruelty in it, and I felt like it was done to just to appeal to a certain type of reader, and it just felt like eating hamburgers or something. It was just sort of. I just thought, I don't want that in my life, and I don't think I could write about that unless it was the valid reason to the story.
Yeah, not just for shock value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you write in silence, or do you have music playing in the background? That's another question from a member.
I write in silence, but I find that I can write anywhere. I don't care, because everything you just go in a bubble and everything blocks out. And I'm like that with when I'm doing artwork as well. You lose track of time, you lose track of whether you're hungry or cold or anything. And then suddenly you come out of it and you think, oh, I'm freezing and I'm starving and how long have I been here? And you're all hunched up and stiffed up. So I don't need music or anything like that around me.
Being attacked by a fly. I've got all the doors and windows open, so I think it's gone again now. Caroline says these chats are going to make me poor.
Oh. Why?
We do read a lot. I don't know how we fit in all the reading that we do, but we do. We're very grateful to our authors, even though they are making us poor.
I guess that was you, Callie. I guess that was you talking about the women mentoring. Because Callie's a friend of mine.
Okay. Hi, Callie.
We met up and she was telling me all about it. She does Open University as well. Open University is really addictive. You can do so many amazing courses that I could carry on.
Remind us what course that you did.
English language and literature degree, but it was over 5 years, and you do all the different modules. But they also do a creative writing one, and I was torn between whether to do the creative writing, pure creative writing, or whether to do English language lit. But I felt that I needed the language and lit more because I needed the understanding the nuts and bolts of how things work. I have found it fascinating. But I've since found you can buy their books secondhand anyway, so you can just go ahead and study stuff for yourself. Yeah.
That's good. We have another question. It just says Facebook user. Do you read other books when you're writing? If you do you read in a different genre or the same?
Well, because it takes me so long to write a book, then I am reading in lots of different genres. But my main genre is psychological thriller. That's the one I always end up coming back to because I really enjoy it. I enjoy the need to know what's going to happen next.
I agree. I love that. I love when I thought I was talking to the camera on my own before, but really I was frozen and you were talking on your own. I was talking about how I was really looking forward to seeing Imi's character development as she's older. I'm fascinated by that, so I can't wait to see what you do with Imi.
Well, she keeps I can feel her thoughts playing around in my head, what kind of person she's going to become. Because I think because of what she sees and what she can hear, she's probably going to become quite an insular person, and find it difficult to make relationships with other people. So I can see her like that type of person, very self-sufficient. She'll still have a relationship with her parents, but she'll keep everybody at a distance.
We had talked about we're going to run out of time soon. We talked about you doing a short reading from one of your
Oh,
books.
okay.
So if I'd like to do that before we run out of time,
All right. So,
I'm just going to sit here and stare at you now and
would you
read.
rather I read about a scene with Imi from Locksmith, or Astrid walking through town in Sweet Dreams?
Oh, I think I'm going to have to go with Amy. We've mentioned her so much. I think your audience needs to hear more about her, the ones who haven't read your books yet.
Well, this is not long after Jude has taken her 3 children to stay with her mother-in-law, a woman she'd never met before, at her farm in deepest, darkest Dorset. And Audra's showing them around the farm, and they've gone into the barn. Audra retrieved her keys and climbed out of the metal seat and back down to the barn's cement floor so Ben could take her place at the wheel. Wow, said Ben as he wriggled his backside in the tractor's saddle. It's really huge and rattly, and it's an arse-aching bone shaker if you go too fast over lumpy ground, said Audra. Okay, now Ben has something to occupy his mind. Let's go see what we have that will float Imi's boat. Turning away from Audra and the tractor, Jude looked behind her for her eldest daughter. Imi was standing with her back to them all, staring transfixed at the giant scythe. Imi, said Jude. But Imi didn't move a muscle, just stayed looking at the long blade. Walking over, she put her hand on Imi's shoulder. Imi didn't move, but said in a tight, whispering voice, not just for cutting corn. Jude looked again at the long, curved blade, dull now and stained a dark brown. She bent forward to speak low into Imi's ear. Hey, to Imi, Audra has something to show you that I think you'll like. What do you say? Imi turned to look at Jude, her pupils huge so that her eyes looked black rather than their usual grey-green. He cried and cried, but they did it anyway, she whispered. Imi, said Jude. She felt alarm run electric up her spine. Imi shivered. It seemed to run through her whole body, from her toes up to the chattering rattle of her teeth. She clenched her fists, her arms rigid at her side. So cold, she stammered. Jude heard a slam of feet hitting the cement floor and an expletive. She turned to see Ben leaning on the tractor. His weight shifted to his good foot, the other raised like a wounded beast's. You okay? She asked him. Ben nodded. Forgot about my foot when I jumped down. Hurts like a sucker. He limped over to Imi and leant on her for support. Come on, weirdo. If you're cold, let's get back out in the sunshine. You don't have to make such a big deal out of it.
Thank you for that. There's something really quite special about a book that you've just read, hearing the author read it.
Yeah.
That was really lovely. Even
Thank
considering you. What you were reading about, it was lovely to hear you read it. Thank you.
That's great, thanks.
We are going to start wrapping it up now. So, do you want to give the members a final show of your book covers?
Yeah. So that's The Locksmith, which is the first one. And then Sweet Dreams, Nightmares Stalk, which has the after tagline, which is all set in Bristol. And this is Bristol and Deepest, Darkest Dorset.
Thank you so much. I really can't wait for book 3 to come out.
Thank you.
So I know obviously it's going to be a little bit of time. We wish you the best of luck with your career in teaching. Hopefully that'll find its way into some of your work in the future.
Yes, I could always murder a few children, can't I, on the pages if I'm finding them difficult. Having said I wouldn't write about cruelty to children. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for being our first ever live author chat.
That's all right.
And let's hope that we get to interview you again in the future with your new book.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
So this has been an interview with Jo Ullah for UK Crime Book Club. And go and have a look at her books. They're fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Bye. Oh, thank you for the members and the admins for joining us as well.
Do I just click it off? Oh, my thing stopped working.